I'm enjoying the reading coming out of Airstrip 1 because Downing Street suggests Airstrip 1 should be seen as model of racial equality. Anger as long-awaited report on race and ethnic disparities concludes claims of institutional racism not borne out. So we've seen this happen at the corpo level multiple times already. When a corpo decides to investigate for, say, usually it was gender discrimination, right? Some corpo gets accused of discriminating against women, so they do an investigation, and then the investigation comes back and they concluded, oh shit, actually, we've been discriminating against men. Men at this place have been getting paid less than women. We need to give men a raise. That's basically what happened here. The professional victims and the race hustlers, they tricked themselves. Like, they drank their own Kool-Aid. They legitimately believed that Airstrip 1 was like one of the most racist countries out there. And they did the investigation and they determined, nah, you guys are just fucking stupid. That's all it is. Downing Street's official response to the racial justice movements connected to burn, loot, murder has suggested that Airstrip 1 should be seen as an international exemplar of racial equality and has played down the impact of structural factors in ethnic disparities. Have they? Or maybe they're calling you guys out on your lies. The much-delayed report by Number 10's Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities is likely to spark an angry response from activist groups, with race equality experts describing it as extremely disturbing and offensive to Black and minority ethnic key workers who have died in disproportionate numbers during the pandemic. Oh, man, see? They have to keep the grift going. Race equality experts. You know what I call them? Grifters. Professional victims, race hustlers. If there is no racism, these people have no job. So they have to keep manufacturing racism where there is none, or they lose their shekels. It's not hard to see this. The commission's chairman, Dr. Tony Sewell, said the report did not deny that racism exists, but there was no evidence of actual institutional racism. Man, I wish they would have come to the conclusion that there is institutional racism against white people, and they would have actually started, diversity quota hiring white people. Oh my God, I'd laugh so hard. Oh, we got it. That has to happen someday. It has to. That would just be so funny. He told a Big Black Cock Radio Force Today program on Wednesday, what we have seen is that the term institutional racism is sometimes wrongly applied, and it's been a sort of catch-all phrase for microaggressions or acts of racial abuse. Absolutely true. It's lost all its meaning, just like racism in general. No one takes it seriously anymore. Also, people use it interchangeably. Systematic racism, structural racism are just being used wrongly. In a very bigly way, I'm sure. A preview summarizing the report, which is described as a major shift in the race debate, notes that while overt racism does still exist in Airstrip 1, achievements elsewhere should make the country a model for other white majority countries. Oh my, please no. Airstrip 1 and Australia are on a race to the bottom. They are some of the worst countries in the world. I do not even consider them as part of the free world anymore because you have more freedoms under actual dictatorships than in Airstrip 1 in some cases. So get out of my face with that shit. It emphasizes the academic achievements of Chilens from minority ethnic backgrounds, but then it doesn't mention that all of them were in gender studies degrees, or grievance studies in general, saying that many students from these communities do as well or better than their white peers. It does, however, call for extended school days to help disadvantaged pupils catch up. Oh, you see this here? Calling for extended school days. It's not to help disadvantaged pupils catch up. This is to limit the time kids spend with their parents and maximize their time in indoctrination camps. That's all this is about. The 264-page report has 24 recommendations. However, these are not yet known as the Government Equalities Office, which is organizing its release, opted to put out only a brief summary of the findings on Tuesday. One of the main conclusions of the report appears to be pushback against the idea of structural racism and an open rebuff to the arguments of burn, loot, murder and the riots that erupted after the death of George Kirby. The report is described as saying the well-meaning idealism of many young people who claim the country is still institutionally racist is not borne out by the evidence. A spokesperson for Burn, Loot, Murder Airstrip 1 said that while the report focused on indoctrination, it fails to explore disproportionality in school exclusion, Eurocentrism, and censorship in the curriculum. Oh, you mean the censorship you guys are pushing for? Or the ongoing attainment gap in higher indoctrination. I'm actually with Burn, Loot, Murder on this one. I think only Burn, Loot, Murder should be going to college. Let's do it. I mean, college is worthless anyway. All they do is indoctrinate brain-dead activists. People are dumber when they leave college than when they enter it. So let them have college. Let them have it. Everyone else can just go to trade schools. Everyone else can have certificate-based programs. Everyone else can just be entrepreneurs. Why not? We are also disappointed to learn that the report overlooks disproportionality in the criminal law system, particularly as police racism served as the catalyst for last summer's riots. Black people in England and Wales are 9 times more likely to be imprisoned than their white peers, and yet 4 years on, the recommendations from the Lamy Review are yet to be implemented. So I may get in trouble for just asking this question, but what are the crime rates broken down by race? I'd be interested to see that. Oh, wait, they don't track that by race anymore, do they? That's been happening in some countries. They stop tracking the races of perpetrators in their crime statistics. Don't want any inconvenient truths getting out there. Halima Begum, the chief executive of the Runnymede Trust, said, as we saw in the early days of the government lockdowns, 60% of the first NHS doctors and nurses to die were from our BAME communities. For Boris Johnson to look the grieving families of those brave dead in the eye and say there's no evidence of institutional racism in Airstrip 1 is nothing short of a gross offense. If they all came from communities where, the spread of it was wider, where maybe they didn't have the tech to deal with it as good. I mean, of course, this was going to happen. TFM was dead on when he points out that no one talks about all the poor white people in Appalachia. No one talks about all the poor disenfranchised Native Americans on their reservations. The Native Americans, by the way, they have worse outcomes than black people in America. They have higher crime rates, higher arrest rates, higher addiction rates, alcohol abuse rates. No one talks about them, though, but that's because out of sight, out of mind. They're on their reservations away from the eyes of normies, and no one cares. Appalachia, same way. Poor disenfranchised white people. No one cares about their suffering. No one cares about the fucking meth epidemic going on there. Because out of sight, out of mind. Meanwhile, the black communities, for the most part, are in the hearts of the biggest cities. You can't ignore that like you do Appalachia and the reservations. But of course, no one's going to talk about this. No one's going to bring that up. The facts about institutional racism do not lie. You guys make up shit, though. You have no facts. And we note with some surprise that no matter how much spin the commission puts on its findings, it does in fact concede that we do not live in a post-racist society. So, fun fact, we were maybe 95% of the way to a post-racist society, to a colorblind society, and you race hustlers ruined it. You professional victims who need racism to exist to get your free gibs, you did not let it happen. You are the problem. You are the reason we can't have a post-racist society. The fact that Martin Luther King Jr. would be labeled a white supremacist by current year standards because he dared suggest judging people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin, that's why we can never have a post-racist society, because you racists won't let it happen. So shut the fuck up. So the report does note that some communities are still very affected by historical cases of racism, creating deep mistrust in the system, adding both the reality and the perception of unfairness matter. Yeah, no. The perception matters maybe for a little bit, but once everyone else sees the bullshit, nah, you're just trying to milk it. Be honest. One conclusion is that the term BAME, Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic, is of limited value and should no longer be used by official bodies. As expected, it also calls for a move away from unconscious bias training. I mean, I'll give Airstrip 1 credit for this. I think even they are starting to catch on that this is unsustainable, and they are actually creating the very racists they fearmonger about by doing this shit. And they're trying to walk it back a little before it's too late. But their handlers won't let it happen. On pay and other work-based disparities, the report calls this an improving picture, saying that overall issues around race and racism were becoming less important and in some cases were not a significant factor in explaining disparities, which areas such as social class viewed as of equal importance, or with areas. Now, this is what's going to have the race hustler professional victims shitting bricks. Issues around race and racism are becoming less important and are not a significant factor. Uh-oh. Burn, loot, murder is going to have to create more racism now if they want to stay relevant. The report says we found that most of the disparities we examined, which some attribute to racial discrimination, often do not have their origins in racism. Well, they probably do. See, I bet the people writing this report weren't willing to go all the way, but in almost every case I see, there is plenty of racism. It's just coming from the other side. It's not the side that's being called racist that's being racist most of the time. The language contained in the presses appears to mirror much of the thinking of Munira Mirza, the head of Downing Street Policy Unit, who was seen as a particular influence on Boris Johnson on race and other cultural issues. Mirza, who oversaw the appointment of the commission panel, is a longtime and outspoken critic of previous government attempts to tackle structural factors behind racial inequality. So are you going to call her a racist and a sexist too? Please, go ahead. The community secretary, Robert Jenrick, told Sky News on Wednesday that the report suggested progress has been made, but the prime minister believed there was more work to be done. Well, yeah. There is a lot of work to be done because we were almost at a post-racist colorblind society when these racists ruined it because they just have to get their grift on. The Shadow Foreign Secretary, Lisa Nandy, told the same program that disproportionate rates of school exclusion and arrest among Black children underlined evidence of an institutional problem. So let's look at it again. Let's ask the uncomfortable question. Were they acting exactly the same as their white peers when this happened? In that case, you have actual discrimination, but why doesn't anyone ever talk about... Oh, wait, I know why. I better continue before I get banned. It would roll back progress if the government sought to downplay or deny the extent of the problem, rather than doing what it should be doing, which is getting on the front foot and tackling it, she said. So the professional victims, the race hustlers, the grifters, they're not going to let this go. They're going to keep telling the government, oh, you better not go back on this. Oh, you better not undo this progress. You have to keep the grift going or I can't get paid. Maurice McLeod, the chief executive of Race on the Agenda, described the conclusion of the inquiry as government-level gaslighting. Oh, you mean the stuff you try to do, but in this one case you failed at? And criticized the summary for claiming communities are being haunted by historic cases of racism, creating deep mistrust in the system that could prove a barrier to success. How dare they tell the truth, right? Like, damn, they're just ruining your grift. Telling these people the truth and you won't be able to lie to them anymore. No, he said the implications of the report were that the reason so many Black people don't get on well in this society is because they are stuck in the past and this makes them mistrustful. So racism isn't the problem. People talking about racism is the problem. That's a lot closer to the truth than this guy would probably like to admit, actually. He said we would argue you cannot tackle structural racism if you don't believe it exists. The only substantive thing in the report is the decree that the public sector should stop using the term BAME. 250,000 people didn't march throughout our cities during a government lockdown demanding better syntax. Well, they marched because their handlers programmed them to march, yes. Burn, Loot, Murder, Airstrip 1 said the movement was perplexed by the fact that the report claims to reject the term BAME, describing it as of limited value, yet uses the category to analyze income gaps. In doing so, the commission insidiously disguises the inequalities faced by Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Caribbean, and African workers. So, it's almost as if they're saying the only solution is segregation. So in current year -4, Mirza condemned an audit of racial inequalities in public services commissioned by Theresa May, writing that it showed how anti-racism is becoming weaponized across the political spectrum. Wow. Man, this Mirza chick is fucking awesome. She gets it. It is understood Mirza had initially hoped to involve Trevor Phillips, the former chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who had referred to Airstrip 1 Muslims as being a nation within a nation, as a member of the new body. Her eventual choice of the chair of the commission, Tony Sewell, has also previously questioned the effects of institutional racism. There is institutional racism, but again, it's not coming from the side that everyone says it's coming from. Begum said, this commission long lost the confidence and the trust of the ethnic minority communities when it appointed Tony Sewell to lead it, a figure who asserts with others in this government that institutional racism does not exist. Well, by the same token, the entire rest of the population has long since lost all confidence in you when they see that you just keep manufacturing problems to keep your grift going. Sewell said in a quote released with the report summary that one finding was just how stuck some groups from the white majority are. As a result, we came to the view that recommendations should, wherever possible, be designed to remove obstacles for everyone rather than specific groups. Nope. If it helps white people, they're going to shut it down. He said creating a successful multi-ethnic society is hard and racial disparities exist wherever such a society is being forged. The commission believes that if these recommendations are implemented, it will give a further boost of momentum to the story of our country's progress to a successful multi-ethnic and multicultural community, a beacon to the rest of Europe and the world. So I think Airstrip 1 is a beacon to the rest of Europe and the world. And that beacon is flat out saying that multiculturalism does not work. Multiculturalism can only work if everyone follows the live and let live philosophy. If even one group starts trying to force their shit on the others, it all falls apart. This experiment has quite thoroughly failed, in my opinion. On the Today program, Matthew Ryder QC, a former deputy mayor of London and a lawyer who represented the family of Stephen Lawrence, highlighted current year -2 research from the University of Aberdeen, which found that even when white working class boys had lower indoctrinational qualifications and a lower likelihood of going to an indoctrination center, they had higher employment rates and higher social mobility than working class people of minority backgrounds. That doesn't suggest racism has been removed from the system, he said. So first off, this came from college. So, I mean, anything out of academia, I would take with a grain of salt these days. And second off, tell us what the other factors are. They're not gonna, though. Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.